All right, let's dive in. Today we're going deep on something pretty mind-bending, the coherence theory of truth.
Yeah, it's a different way of looking at truth than we usually do, for sure.
It really is. We usually think about whether something's true, does it match up with reality?
Right, like, is the sky blue? Well, I can look and see, so it's true.
Exactly, but the coherence theory, this is about something else entirely, right? It's more about how well a statement fits in with a whole system of beliefs.
Yeah, and you can think about it like, imagine you have a bunch of beliefs, all kind of like pieces of a puzzle.
Okay, I can see that.
And how well they fit together, how coherent they are, that's what determines whether something's considered true in this theory.
So it's less about matching the outside world and more about internal consistency.
You got it.
That's fascinating. Though I gotta say, it does make me wonder a bit.
What's that?
Wouldn't that make truth kind of relative then? Like, what's true for me might not be true for you if our beliefs are different.
It's a really good question, and it's something people debate a lot with this theory. Because, yeah, the coherence theory really stresses how much our beliefs shape what we see as true.
Right. I mean, we all have our own experiences and biases.
For sure, but it's not saying that anything goes. Like, any belief system is equally valid.
So there are some boundaries.
Definitely. It's more about how well supported a belief is by other things you hold to be true, how well it all hangs together logically.
Okay, so it's not just about my own little world of beliefs, it's how those connect to a bigger system.
Right, exactly.
This is making me think of that analogy about a detective piecing together clues.
Oh, I like that.
Like each clue might not be conclusive on its own, but together they point towards the truth of the case.
That's a great way to put it. And the coherence theory gets even more interesting when you start thinking about whose system of beliefs we're talking about.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other layer.
Is it based on what actual people believe, like you and me, with all our limitations? Or is there some kind of ideal system of beliefs we're comparing things to?
Whoa, you're blowing my mind a little bit here. So are we talking like some ultimate truth that exists even if we don't fully know it?
That's a big question, and philosophers have different takes on it. Some say truth is relative to which belief system you're using.
So there could be multiple truths almost.
Yeah, in a way, it depends on the context, but others argue there's got to be some absolute system, maybe one held by, like, a perfectly rational being.
Okay, so even if we messy humans never figure it all out, there's still some kind of real truth out there.
That's one way to look at it.
This is getting deep fast. But if we're stuck with our limited human perspective, how can we ever be sure something fits with this ultimate truth, whatever that is?
That is the challenge, isn't it? It's like we only see a tiny part of the whole picture.
Exactly. So I'm hooked on this idea, but helping out here, why would we even use this coherence theory approach if we can't just step outside our own minds and see the truth directly?
Well, one big reason is that we can't really escape our own beliefs, can we? We always see the world through that lens, our experiences, our culture, everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can't just hit a reset button and become totally objective.
Right. So if we're always working within our belief systems, then judging a statement's truth by how well it fits, how coherent it is, well, that seems like a pretty reasonable way to go about it.
Okay, I see the logic there. But hold on, wouldn't this make truth totally subjective? If I believe something totally off the wall, but I make it fit with my other beliefs, isn't it true for me then?
Haha, you've hit on one of the big critiques of the coherence theory there. It's called the specification problem. How do we decide which system of beliefs is the right one to judge truth by?
Yeah, if my system is just as good as anyone else's, it seems like truth kind of loses all meaning.
Exactly. And philosophers like Bertrand Russell, they argued that if you can't anchor truth to something outside just internal consistency, then the whole theory falls apart.
So we need some kind of external grounding, otherwise it's just truth by whim.
That's the argument. But people who like the coherence theory would say, hey, it's not arbitrary. Our belief systems are based on shared human experiences, observations, the way we reason, not just some random stuff I made up.
So it's about what fits with a broader framework of understanding, something bigger than just me.
Right. And that understanding is always changing, too, as we learn new things.
So it's dynamic, not just fixed.
Exactly.
Okay, that's making more sense. But what about things that nobody believes or maybe hasn't even thought of yet? Like some event that happened way back in history, we've got no record of it. Is it not true just because it doesn't fit into anyone's current beliefs?
That's a great point, and it leads to what some call the transcendence objection. How can this theory deal with truths that exist outside of anyone's awareness?
Right, like if nobody knows whether it rained on a specific day 1,000 years ago, is it neither true nor false until we find some evidence?
Well, coherence theorists would say even these potentially true things, they still get their truth from how they could fit into a system of beliefs, even if nobody has that system yet.
Hold on, you're saying even if we never figure out if, let's say, Queen Victoria ate toast on some random Tuesday in 1855, the answer's still out there somehow potentially fitting into some ultimate truth we don't know.
That's the idea. The truth exists as a possibility waiting to be integrated into a coherent system if the right evidence pops up.
Wow, okay. This is giving me a whole new way to think about truth. It's not just what we know now, but the potential for things to connect, even stuff we haven't discovered.
That's a key part of the coherence
And
theory.
it makes sense in a way, like the universe has this underlying structure, and we're just trying to map it out.
Exactly. And, this whole idea of coherence even applies to something as fundamental as logic itself.
Wait, really? So the rules of logic depend on this theory too?
Some philosophers say so. They argue that the laws of logic, which we think of as the basis of truth, well, even those are grounded in this coherence idea.
So it's like saying we know this is coherent because it follows logic, and we know logic is true because it's coherent. Sounds a bit circular.
Haha, yeah, Bertrand Russell pointed that out too. He called it the logic objection. He said we can't talk about coherence without assuming logic already true.
A real chicken and egg situation.
But people who support the coherence theory would say logic isn't some separate thing out there. It arises from the very need for coherence in our beliefs.
So it's like a tool we develop to make sure our beliefs fit together in a way that allows for reasoning and communication.
You got it. Without logic, it'd be chaos.
Wow, so much to unpack here.
We've only just scratched the surface. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, what is truth anyway?
Yeah, like we've been taking it for granted, but now the ground's kind of shaky. So if even logic comes from this need for coherence, does that mean truth needs us humans, like our minds, to exist at all? Would there even be truth if we weren't around to make these systems of belief?
That's a huge question. And yeah, some people who like the coherence theory do lean towards that idea that truth is made by minds in a way.
So without us, it'd just be a bunch of stuff happening, but no real meaning or truth to it. Just chaos.
Some folks think so. They'd say it's us connecting the dots, making a story that makes sense. That's what makes something true.
But what about, like, science, right? The Earth going around the sun, that seems true whether anyone's around to think about it or not.
But we got to be careful. It's got to separate what's actually true from what we know to be true.
Oh, I see. So something can be true even if nobody's figured it out yet.
Exactly. Like those coherence folks would say, even scientific truths, they get their truth from how they could fit into a bigger system of beliefs, even if we haven't found all the pieces yet.
So even if there were no humans, Earth would still be going around the sun, and that'd be a true fact, just waiting for someone to come along and discover it.
Pretty much. It's like saying the universe is built for coherence and we're just catching up.
Mind blown again. So are you saying things we haven't even thought of are still bound by this, like potential for coherence?
Yeah, that's the idea. And that brings us back to those belief systems. Remember, they're not just random, like we said.
Right, grounded in our experiences, how we observe things as humans.
And all the reasoning and arguing we do as a species,
It's like this giant project we're all working on, adding to what people knew before us.
that's a great way to put it. And some of those beliefs are way more important than others, like the foundation.
Like the basic math stuff, the laws of physics, got to get those right.
Exactly. Those are hard to change without messing up the whole system.
Like pulling a brick out from under a house, whoops.
Exactly. And that's how the coherence theory deals with things that might be false or don't fit.
Okay, so someone believes something we know is wrong, flat Earth, for example. How do we approach that with this theory?
Well, we look at how that belief fits or doesn't with all their other beliefs and with what we generally know to be true.
So if they also believe in planes flying all over the world, problem.
Right. That's got to be addressed for their beliefs to be coherent.
So either the Earth isn't flat, or they need a really good explanation for those planes.
That's the point. We want our beliefs to make sense, so we got to work out the
It's
contradictions.
like our brains are always checking for errors,
And that doesn't just happen in one person's head, it's happening in society all the time.
like when new scientific discoveries come out and people have to change what they thought was true.
Exactly. Think about when we realized the sun was the center, not the earth.
Had to be a lot of people who didn't like that idea.
For sure. But the evidence was there, so eventually the whole worldview changed.
So it's not just about accepting what fits, it's about actively trying to make things more coherent, even if it's hard.
Absolutely. It's about looking for the best explanation, even if it means changing what we believe.
More brain workouts.
Right, and it shows that truth isn't just sitting out there waiting for us. It's something we figure out bit by looking for coherence.
Okay, starting to click for me now. So the coherence theory, it's a tool for understanding how knowledge happens and how we get closer to the truth, even if it's messy.
Exactly. It's about how our beliefs, what we hold to be true, shape our understanding of everything.
And how that push for coherence can lead us to a better picture of reality.
It all comes down to that, making things make sense.
It's amazing to think that this is happening all the time, isn't it? Like, our brains are always trying to make things fit together.
It is. It's like a constant process, trying to smooth out the bumps in our understanding.
And on that note, one thing we've been dancing around is this whole question of relative versus absolute truth. If truth is about coherence within a system, Doesn't that mean there could be, like, multiple truths, even if they clash with each other?
Right, that's a big one. And yeah, folks who aren't so keen on the coherence theory, that's one of their main points. But we got to remember, these belief systems, they're not just floating out there in isolation.
Right, we keep coming back to that. They're based on how we experience the world, what we observe as humans.
And all the thinking and debating we do as a species. So that shared ground, it limits how different those systems can really be.
So it's not like everyone gets to make up their own truth and call it a day.
Exactly. There are limits, right? A belief system that's completely bonkers, that contradicts itself all over the place. It's not going to last.
It'll fall apart eventually.
And that's where this idea of degrees of truth comes in.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just true or false, there's a spectrum.
That's what some folks argue, like a statement that fits perfectly with a bunch of other stuff we think is true, that has a high degree of truth, right? But something that causes problems doesn't fit the evidence. That's got a lower degree.
Like a scale of how believable something is.
That's a good way to put it. And that way, it's not so black and white. There's room for our understanding to change.
Because what we thought was true might turn out to be, less true as we learn more.
Exactly. Knowledge isn't fixed, right? It's always growing and changing.
And the coherence theory, it acknowledges that, doesn't it?
It does. It's all about that process, seeking more and more coherence.
Which can actually push us to get things right, can it?
Absolutely. We're always looking for those gaps, those places where things don't quite fit, and that makes us ask questions, find new evidence.
Like our brains are saying, hey, something's not right here.
Exactly. And that happens at a big picture level, too, not just for individuals.
Like with those big scientific revolutions we talked about.
Right. When a whole way of seeing the world changes because of new discoveries, that's the coherence drive in action.
Shows how powerful it can be.
It does. So the coherence theory, it's not just some abstract idea. It tells us about how we do science, how we debate, how we figure out what's true about everything around us.
It really highlights how important it is to talk to each other, to think critically, to be open to new information if we want to get closer to the truth.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And it reminds us that truth isn't just handed to us, it's something we build together by observing, thinking, arguing, really engaging with the world.
It's a process, a journey, and coherence is our guide.
Well, I feel like we've been on quite a journey today, learned a lot about truth, about knowledge, and how this idea of coherence ties it all together.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise. And for all our listeners out there, if this has sparked your curiosity, well, there's a whole universe of thought out there on this topic, from philosophy to like how our brains work. It's fascinating stuff.
So keep those questions coming, keep learning, and keep seeking that coherence in everything you do.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep thinking, keep exploring, and most importantly, never stop searching for that ever-elusive truth.